I was experiencing a level of fear that I didn't know existed.
Today's guest lived the kind of missions history books still whisper about.
There's a human reaction to combat. Humans react in predictable ways if you start shooting at them.
The North Vietnamese Army had a dossier on you, calling you completely nuts.
When you're that age, your prefrontal cortex has not developed enough yet for you to understand that you're not bulletproof. You don't do risk assessment very well. The crew was still trapped inside. Fuel was spilling out of a helicopter and running down on them. So any tracer round hit it, the whole thing was just going to burn up and burn everybody. They knew we were there. They were saying they had already killed all of us. And there were about 800 of them coming. There were 22 of us.
First of all, this is my voice. I'm Tim Green, and I have ALS. But this podcast isn't about ALS. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for me. I'm a father of 5, married for over 35 years, a New York Times best-selling author, an NFL first-round pick, and a practicing attorney. This is Nothing Left Unsaid, where my son Troy and I sit down with extraordinary people for raw, honest conversations about life, its toughest trials, and greatest triumphs. My voice in today's episode is powered by 11 Labs. Today's guest lived the kind of missions history books still whisper about. As a Special Forces officer in Vietnam, he led recon teams into the shadows deep behind enemy lines, where survival was measured in seconds and silence. His code name was Dynamite. Later, he carried that same resilience into classrooms, boardrooms, and lives that needed to understand leadership under fire. He's a soldier, a scholar, a psychologist, and a builder of high-performing teams. Today, we'll talk about courage in the jungle and in the office, the science of stress, the quiet weight of memory, and the faith and family that anchor him still. Dr. Dick Thompson, thank you for your service and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me on. This is my honor to serve, and I great admiration for you and looking forward to having a conversation with you this afternoon.
Before we get into your background, I need to ask you about one of the most bone-chilling stories I've ever heard. You were being surrounded by hundreds of the North Vietnamese Army when a woman's voice broke through your top secret encrypted radio. She knew your real name, not your cover name, and she began reading your team's obituaries. Can you walk us through that whole situation like we've never heard it before?
I had a team that we had taken into Laos, close to North Vietnam. The North Vietnamese had captured a lot of American prisoners, and they were trying to move them through Cambodia into North Vietnam. And we were sent out to intercept them and try to get them back. And we got inserted late. In the evening, we moved to an area where we were going to spend the night and then get up and hunt for them the next morning. And I had kind of leaned back against a tree. I was tired. It was getting dark. My eyes were starting to roll back in my head, and I heard a twig break. And it got my attention because once we stopped and got down on the ground, no one moved, because if you moved, you would be considered the enemy, and someone would probably take you out. But I heard the twig, and then I heard another one, and I could tell someone in the dark was moving directly at me. And I became concerned they were going to step on me. And when they stepped on me, they would know I was there, and they would start shooting at me. I couldn't shoot back at that point, because if I did, the muzzle blast would just light me up like a neon sign, and whoever he had with him would start shooting at me. And so I decided once he got close enough, I was going to reach up, grab him, pull him down, put my the muzzle of my weapon in the side of his head. And if he didn't scream, holler, fire his weapon, then I wouldn't shoot him. But if he made noise, I'd have to shoot him. And when he got close, I reached up, I grabbed him by the front of his shirt with one hand. I came around with a rifle into the side of his head with the other, tripped him with my foot, and I brought him down. He was face down in the mud right next to me, and he didn't make a sound. It scared him so badly when I grabbed him out of the darkness that he couldn't even make a gasp. So he was laying on the ground, and I was thinking, now that I have him, what am I going to do with him? Because I still can't make any noise. But all of a sudden, I heard him start whispering, and he was saying, lights, lights. And I thought, he's speaking English words, and he's saying something about lights. And he said it again. And I looked up the ridgeline, and I could see about 400 lights, lanterns that they were carrying, coming down the mountain. And there were obviously people in between the lanterns, so there were 400, 500 maybe NVA coming down the mountain, down this little ridge line that we were on, and they were going to walk right into us. I looked around the other way, and I saw lights coming up the ridge. So we were going to be right in the intersection of about 800 enemy soldiers. There were 22 of us. So things were getting interesting. Stress level going up a bit. And, I realized that this was a Vietnamese captain that we had taken with us on this particular mission. And he didn't understand about you can't get up and move around. When he saw the lights, he was trying to find me and tell me about it. Fortunately, he didn't make any noise, so I didn't shoot him. So I let him up. I whispered over to my assistant team leader that we had a problem. There were NVA coming up and down the ridge. And then my radio operator whispered to me, and he said, "Sir, you need to hear this." And I thought, now what? We got lights coming from everywhere, and you want me to listen to something on the radio, the handset. And he had a radio that was the most encrypted, top secret radio that the Army had that you could physically carry. But when he handed me the handset and I started to listen, what I heard was a Vietnamese woman talking, and I could hear music in the background. And I thought, what is this? I'm recognizing the music. It was the kind of music that my grandmother used to listen to at 12 o'clock when I was a little kid. And she would tell us little kids, be quiet. I need to hear the obituary on the radio. Because at 12 o'clock every day, the local radio station would publish the most recent obituaries. And it had a particular kind of music that was played in the southern U.S. In the background. And I was hearing this North Vietnamese woman playing the same kind of music. And then she said that she was going to read off the names of the U.S. soldiers who were killed in action that day. And she started reading the names off. And, she read mine off first. And she called me Dick Thompson. At that point in time, no one on that side of the world, except for two other guys, knew that I was called Dick outside of the military. And those two guys were not with us, but I knew where they were. And somehow she had gotten my nickname of Dick and read it off, and then continued to go down the list and read everyone's name off that was on the team with us. So they knew who all of us were, where we were, and they were coming in to get us. And the people in Saigon who were monitoring the radio conversation, they thought she'd just messed up my name and should have called me Henry, but she called me something else, you know. So they thought she made a mistake, but she didn't. I mean, she was that accurate with the information that she had. So we knew trouble was about to really happen. They knew we were there. They were saying they had already killed all of us, and there were about 800 of them coming. There were 22 of us. The weather was bad. They couldn't come. There was no way a helicopter or anything could come get us. We couldn't get gunships in because the weather was so bad. So we were just going to have to deal with all those people ourselves. So that was, I know that was a long story, but that was the part about the radio and the woman on the radio.
Well, what was going through your head? I mean, did you think you were doomed, or did you have an idea, any plan, or what to do next?
Well, yeah, I knew we had to put together a plan very quickly because they were going to be on us in about 45 minutes. So we had a little time to plan. I mean, we had already set up defensive weapons and things, you know, ready for the night just in case someone walked into us. So we put out some more. We rearranged where we had set up the machine guns to have more firepower to engage them as they came out the ridge. We also knew that if they got to us at about the same time, when the two sides started shooting at us, they'd actually be shooting at each other too. So, and the ridge lines were so steep on the side, they couldn't get down on the side and try to, you know, come up. They had to stay up on the ridge, so that limited how they could shoot. So, you know, those things we had planned out ahead, and that helped us out when they got there. So, yeah, I was beginning to think this is going to probably be a really short night or a long night. So, one of the two.
So you gotta finish that story. What happened?
Well, I talked to, we had a forward air controller flying way above us, above the clouds, and he said we can't get any gunships or anything to you, but we can try something. We have some F4 Phantoms out here, and they can do something called a combat sky spot, where the plane, we give them a set of coordinates, and the plane tries to fly toward that just using radar. And when his radar told him he was at the right place, he would drop a 500-pound bomb, and we would listen to hear where it went off. And, you know, radar was not that accurate back then. He couldn't see. He was kind of guessing at when to let the bomb go. So, and we had given him coordinates 300 meters, 300 plus yards away from us, or 3,000, I'm sorry, away from us. And the bomb hit just a little ways from us. And we thought, he's very inaccurate, you know, using this process. But we had him drop some more, and we finally got him so that the bombs were hitting on the ridge line, and started having him just slowly move them up the ridge line till they started engaging the NVA that were coming down. And then we had him start in the valley and start coming up, engaging the ones coming up from there. And, you know, that slowed them down enough, and also made them upset, but it slowed them down so they couldn't get to us very quickly. And then it took about 23 hours of continual fighting with them until we were finally extracted the next evening. So it was a long day. I'm sorry?
Did you limit it to just one side? Were you either shooting up or down, or were they hitting on both sides?
They were hitting on both sides. And, you know, sometimes they'd miss the ridge and go over it and go down in the valley, but they were getting most of the bombs on the ridge line. So that really slowed them down, and it killed a bunch of them that way. Finally, we got a chance the next afternoon to try to move down toward a clearing where we could get some helicopters in and be extracted. I was up front leading the team down. They ambushed us on the way down. We took some casualties. Nobody was killed, but some people were hit. But we did the ambushers in. We got down to where we could see the clearing, the landing zone, and my point man stopped me, and I asked him what was wrong, and he said, "Bomb." And I said, "What do you mean bomb?" And he started pointing toward the clearing. And I looked for a minute, and then I could see the tail fin of one of those 500-pound bombs sticking up out of the mud in the landing zone. So now we've got a problem. I mean, if anybody shoots and hits that bomb, it's going to go off and it's going to kill all of us. So we had to, and the North Vietnamese who were coming up to get us, they didn't know it was there. So we had to alert all of our people, don't fire anything over toward that side of the landing zone because there's a bomb there. And when you come in to try to pick us up, and it took 5 helicopters to, come in and get us out, you got to be quick. So.
Did anyone ever figure out how that woman had your voice and how she got on the radio?
We had tried to run this mission 8 days before, but got diverted to another mission just before we went out. So when we came back from the other mission, we had to recover and rearm and everything. So there was an 8-day gap in there between when we were supposed to go out and when we actually went out. And I think some of the Vietnamese who worked in our compound, there were some women who, did laundry, did a bunch of things like that. And, we think they must have seen a letter or something in my room that had Dick on it, that they had figured out what my name was, and that they had time to figure out the mission we were trying to go on and where we were going and get the names of the other people. So we had some spies inside the compound, and it was validated a couple of years later that there were some spies both at our compound and up at our headquarters. So they had a lot of information about us before we went out.
Yeah, that's so scary.
Man, what a story. All right, as promised, let me ask a few questions about your life growing up, and then we will get back to Vietnam. Can you tell us about the impact your mom had buying you that chemistry set growing up, and if that played a role in you getting the chemistry scholarship to South Carolina?
I grew up in a military family. My mother had 5 brothers deployed to World War II at the same time, plus my father was deployed with them, so that she had 6 people in World War II fighting at the same time. One of her brothers didn't make it back. Then my father got called back into the service to go to Korea. So I was around Army talk, from the time I was big enough to understand, what they were saying. I asked questions. I was fascinated by the Army. We lived out on a small little farm, so I got to play in the woods by myself, track animals, learn how to move and do things like that. And what I wanted to do was go into the military when I was old enough. So that was my plan. I liked science, at school, but my plan was to go in the military until when I was 13, Santa Claus brought me a chemistry set. And so then I had something to really do science with. I had all these chemicals and things. And at that time, you could go to what we call the drugstore, the pharmacy. And if your parents, like my mother, she went with me and said, it's okay for him to buy sulfuric acid or sulfur or whatever it was I was asking about. And they would sell it to us. And I would take it home and use it to experiment with. I started building rockets, started with just little rockets, and then I moved up to, I had one that was about 3 feet tall that didn't make it off the launch pad. It exploded on the ground, but it was so close to my neighbor's house. It cracked some of their windows. They were not happy about it. So I went back to the smaller rockets. I like to blow things up, build telescopes, anything around science, being invisible, tracking animals. I wanted to be a research chemist, so I got a scholarship to University of South Carolina, and what I wanted to do was get a PhD in chemistry and be able to do research. But then I was listening to the news, which came on at 5 o'clock every day. The national news came on, and they would always have a little report on there about what was happening with the war in Vietnam. And it started to sound to me like, based on what they were saying, that we were winning, it was going to be over soon. And I thought, well, if I want to go do my patriotic duty, like my family's always been doing, I need to get over there now. So I decided I would stop college temporarily, enlist in the Army, go to Vietnam, come back, and go ahead and finish my degree. So, but when I got in the Army, I found there were a lot of things I could do. I was getting paid, and I was doing all kind of fun things. I loved to go out to the rifle range and shoot all these different weapons and just all the different things we were doing. And then I volunteered to, or they asked me about going to officer candidate school and being an officer. I said, sure. When I got there, then I volunteered to go to airborne training after I got a commission so I could jump out of planes. Then I wanted to go to Special Forces, and they sent me there. I wanted to go to the Rangers, they sent me there. And then finally, they sent me to Vietnam. So I got to go there, and I joined the most elite, most top secret organization that we had, that existed at that time. So secret, I had to sign a non-disclosure that said I wouldn't say anything about where I had been, what I had done. I wouldn't even say the name SOG for at least 20 years, or I'd be prosecuted if I did. I was volunteering to go anywhere, anytime, and do anything. And I was 21 years old. If you ask a 21-year-old, you want to join a group that's going to go anywhere, do anything, and not tell anybody about it for 20 years, I mean, that's like a recruiting poster. I can do that. Yeah, put my name on the list. I'll go. And it wouldn't tell you what you were going to do. I said you can only find that out after you're actually in the organization. So, when I found out, I realized I was going into a black hole, and most of the people who were going in to be operators would end up being killed. So I was very fortunate. I got out with, shrapnel wounds, broken back, broken ribs, broken nose, broken hand, a bunch of other injuries, but I was still alive.
Looking back at the 19-year-old who raised his hand and stepped off into Special Forces training, what was driving him and what did he think he was running toward?
Well, I had gotten excited about being a ranger when I was a little kid from the stories I had heard coming from World War II. And so this was an opportunity for me to be in special operations. And special operations got to do everything. They got all of the new equipment, all of the really tough missions going into, Vietnam was like our training room. So we would practice fighting the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong in North Vietnamese or North Vietnam. That's where we would practice our missions. And then we would go to Laos, Cambodia, North Vietnam, the other Southeast Asian countries there where we were not supposed to be, and where the president was saying on a regular basis, we don't have anybody over there. We don't go over there. And we were going over there on a regular basis and ambushing convoys and blowing up ammunition caches and all kinds of things. So, I mean, it was pretty cool. It was dangerous, but it was pretty cool.
Can you tell us about your first mission? Did your team have a hard time accepting it initially because you were so young and inexperienced?
The first mission was going to be relatively simple, and we were a small team and on one helicopter, and we were going to fly out, and they had dropped a big bomb on a ridgeline in the jungle and opened up a hole big enough for the helicopter to sit down in. So we were going to go out just before dark, get in that hole, move up a ways, and then the next day we were going to go do what we called a wiretap. We had a small cassette recorder and some devices to hook it onto a telegraph-like line running through the trees so we could record the messages and things that the North Vietnamese were sending. So we were going to get up and do that the next day. But as we were coming into that hole in the canopy, I got out on the skid. The other American next to me got out on the skid, and two guys on the other side got on the other skid of the helicopter, and we're barely moving over the top of the treetops, and we get to the hole that the bomb had blown in the canopy, and the helicopter starts trying to settle down in that hole, and when it stopped, we were still about 6 feet above the ground, above the bottom of the crater, and we were going to have to jump off in there. And I was thinking about, I've got about 75 pounds of gear on, and I'm going to jump 6 feet with this stuff. I'm probably going to break both legs when I hit the bottom. And those thoughts were going through my mind, and I bent my knees to get ready to jump off. And just as I did, I saw this guy on the ground looking up at me, had his AK-47 pointed up toward me, getting ready to shoot me. And instead of jumping into the crater with him, I jumped back up on the edge of the helicopter just as he pulled the trigger. So my legs moved and the bullets hit the guy's legs next to me. So I grabbed the back of his harness because his legs collapsed and he was going to fall off in there. I pulled him up on the edge. I shot the guy that shot him. Then an ambush opened up all around us. And there's nothing between us and the enemy but air. And just hundreds of bullets are coming at us. And I was thinking, this is impossible. You can't have that many bullets coming at you at one time and they're not hitting, us. They're hitting the helicopter, they're going through the cargo compartment, but they're not hitting anybody else. And I'm shooting some of them that are in the trees. My magazine emptied, and I couldn't get the other one or a new one out of my pouch. My hand was soaked in blood from the guy next to me. So it was wet, slick. The magazines were in there tight. I was having trouble getting it out. When I finally did get it out, then trying to put it in the magazine well, put it in the weapon, I couldn't get it to go in the hole. My hand was shaking so much because I was experiencing a level of fear that I didn't know existed. You know, I had tried to imagine what it would be like, but in my wildest imagination, I couldn't get to the level that I was experiencing right then. Later on, I learned and realized that when your stress level starts to go up really high, you begin to lose your fine motor coordination. So trying to get the magazine out was very difficult because I'd lost so much dexterity and everything with my fingers. I couldn't get it in the hole because my hand was shaking, and you know, bullets are steadily coming at me. But I finally got it in there and returned fire and shot some others in trees. And the next one came out a lot easier. So we were there in that crater probably a minute and a half or 2 minutes, being shot at from all around us. We had gunships with us that were shooting on either side of us, so we had tons of bullets coming in all around us. We had another Air Force plane that was dropping some smaller bombs around us. And eventually we lifted up out of that hole and got out of there and flew back. And when we dropped the guy that got shot in the legs, we dropped him off at the hospital on the way. And when we got on the ground, I was talking to the sergeant who was in charge of the team. And he looked at me and I said, I'm curious, how many magazines did you empty? How many, magazines of ammunition did you fire while we were down in that hole? And he said, well, I emptied 6 magazines. I threw a fragmentation grenade and I threw a smoke grenade. And I was thinking, I emptied 3. He shot twice as much as I did, plus hand grenades on. And he looked at me and he said, Lieutenant, I'm going to tell you something. If you don't learn to change magazines faster when people are shooting at you, you're going to die. I said, okay, I understand. I thought it was fast, but I'm going to get a lot faster before we come back out here. So I learned a lot that night. I learned a lot about fear, about stress, about all the different things that are happening at once, and started learning about how do I manage that? If I'm thinking about all those bullets and I'm in charge, I can't tell people what to do. I can't manage the battle. I have to find a way to let go of the bullets, use the fear as energy to help me do the job better, not to distract me from what my job is. So I started thinking a lot that night about the battle, the human reaction to combat. There are a lot of instinctual things that you do when your stress level shoots up like that. And, I also put everything kind of in the context of chemistry. The smells or explosions, the fire, all the different things, and then chemicals being released in your body and things like that. So I was still using that chemical mindset to try to process, what I saw and what I could learn from it. I know that was a really long answer. Sorry.
No, it's great. Did your team accept you right away, or was there did some people say, hey, you just got here, kind of a thing?
The rule was that to be a leader of a SOG team, it didn't matter what your rank was, because I was an officer and everybody else was enlisted, and the actual team leader on that mission was a non-commissioned officer. I mean, I outranked him, but because it was a SOG team, I had to go out with a team a few times until the team leader said, yeah, Thompson's good. I mean, he can lead a team now. So I had to go out. Actually, I went out with that team on 4 missions, and then I was taken off of that team and made the leader of another team. So I had to learn. So it took the team a little while to get accustomed to me, to see that I would shoot back, and that's a problem. Some people won't shoot back. You know, people start shooting at you and you get scared, and you don't shoot back. You try to hide. You try to get out of the way of the bullets. So they saw that I would shoot back. You know, I would fight. You know, so that made them trust me more. I did grab, you know, the American that was shot. I drug him back in the helicopter. If I hadn't done that, he'd have been dead. So they saw me do things that caused them to start to trust me.
That's definitely one way to earn trust. In SOG, you lived by a code of silence, knowing that your missions would not be acknowledged for decades. Did you really know what you were getting yourself into, or were you just an excited kid?
I think the latter. I was an excited kid. I thought this was really cool. And if you look at the photographs of the people who were actually on the teams, we all look like little babies, because most of us were 20, 21, 22 years old. You know, you had John Strockermeyer on here. We're less than a year apart in age, you know. So, I mean, we were all. I was 21, he was 22, and you look at all the guys, they're all young. When you're that age, your prefrontal cortex has not developed enough yet for you to understand that you're not bulletproof. You don't do risk assessment very well. You don't plan ahead very well, and you think you can do everything. And when somebody, you know, waves that flag and says, go anywhere, do anything, and don't tell anybody for 20 years, you jump out and volunteer for that. Excuse me. The older guys are the ones that are not on the teams, you know, so they run the things back in the rear and do other things. It's the young guys who tend to get out there doing it.
You've written and maybe even mastered leadership under catastrophic stress. Is stress the same in every situation, or does stress have a completely different meaning in the Vietnam jungle versus the corporate boardroom?
Yeah, I usually tell people stress is stress. So if someone's shooting at you, you're going to be stressed, even if you got a lot of experience. If you're in a car accident and you see it happening, it's going to stress you. If you know, you and I are not exactly the same size. When I was in high school, I played football, but I was a running back. You know, I wasn't on the line. But when I would see one of those big guys coming at me, you know, my stress level would go up because I knew he was going to crush me like a bug. And, you know, so there's stress. There's stress when you're playing sports. There's stress in everyday life. And all of that stress, it has the same effect on you. It's just how much stress are you getting and how far is it pushing you? A lot of things happen. I learned very quickly that I had been out on the firing range and I had shot, you know, thousands of times. I knew exactly what the sight picture was supposed to look like. I knew how to line everything up. I knew how to hit the targets out there. But then I discovered if those targets shoot back at you, your stress level goes up. Paper targets don't shoot back, so that's not stressful. But the targets that shoot back run your stress level up, and then what you discover is that as your stress level goes up, one of the effects that you have from the stress is your vision changes. You can't focus on the sights on your weapon when the stress level starts getting up. You can't see them. In fact, when you look around, you can't see most of what's in front of you. You get tunnel vision. And as your stress gets more and more, it's like looking through a little tunnel. And I can see right there, but I can't see anything around it. I lose my ability to see that. So there are a lot of effects like that from stress that impacts you, during battle, and it impacts law enforcement. When they're trying to carry out their job, it impacts on whether or not they actually fire their weapon. First responders, firefighters, anybody that deals in jobs with high stress, it impacts them. And it impacts us all the same. It's just, how much do we get?
After going through the, like extreme stress of Vietnam or SOG or any of that stuff, when you come back home, does things that stress out regular people, does it just seem like a joke, or does it still affect you the same way?
Some things kind of seem like a joke. You think, the copier is not making good copies and you're getting stressed out over that. Give me a break. Put some more paper in it, put some more toner and do it. It's just a little machine. It's not shooting at you. But on the other side, if you hear something that sounds like a gunshot, your stress level can skyrocket. I mean, you'll be on the ground. You just drop straight down because survival is on the ground. It's not standing up. There are a lot of things that can trigger a stress response in you that could cause you to react inappropriately. And in the second book, it talks about when I was coming back, and what I found to be the biggest issue for me coming back to the U.S. The biggest issue was restraint. How do I restrain myself? Because I just came from a world where, my job was to go out and shoot people. It was like the Wild West. And now I'm back in the U.S. where we have rules and laws and things that you have to follow. So, and I'm coming through the airport, and at the time that Vietnam was going on, it was like the country was kind of divided into two groups. The anti-war people and the people who were going to go do what they thought was patriotic and come back. So when I was coming through the airport, I had on a uniform, and there were anti-war people there who they would spit at you. They would yell things at you, baby killer, things like that. And as I came through, I realized that some of these people who were yelling things at me, they had backed away, and they were not going to be close to me and say that. But I was also looking at them and thinking, I'm not carrying 80 pounds of combat gear. I could be from where I am to you before you realized I've even started at you. I could be there before you could start to move, and it wouldn't be pleasant. But I don't have to do that. I know I could do that. I know that's not the right thing to do. I need to just keep walking. Let him yell whatever he wants to yell. Keep walking. And, learning to manage, the stress, manage your restraint is all part of it.
Did that hurt you psychologically more than you thought? Like, you go and give a huge chunk of your life and time and risk for the country to come back and have people, literally spitting at you?
Yeah, I mean, it was irritating, but that was happening before I went. So if I had on a uniform, sometimes people might spit at me, but, excuse me, I knew the country was split up like that. And it was going to be there when I came back. You heard about it. Occasionally we We got news articles and things we could read, so we knew what was going on back here, and that there was going to be that part of the population who were not going to respond very well to us.
Take us inside one of those recon missions. What did the world look, sound, and feel like when you were waiting for an extraction and the odds of making it out alive weren't in your favor?
You knew that the odds of coming back from each mission were not very high. Just in 12 months, just where I was located, I lost 34 friends and teammates just in 12 months, just from my little part of the organization. So teams would go out and you'd never hear from them again. They'd get off the helicopter, go into the jungle, and they're still gone. So that was happening. We had memorial services on a regular basis for the people who were killed and didn't come back. So you were seeing that happen, plus when you went out, you saw how close they came to getting you every time, and what kind of injuries you came back with every time. So you had some fear, but it also creates, in a lot of people, an addiction. You get addicted to it. And it's like, getting ready for a big football game. And you're getting all excited and ramped up, and people are shouting and yelling, on the team, and getting yourself psyched up to go out through the tunnel, go out there on the field and play. And you're so pumped when you get out there, you don't feel a lot of the hits and a lot of the pain until after the game. But you're going, and it's the same way when you're getting ready to get on the helicopter. The helicopters are cranked up. Your smell, there's a certain smell that the jet fuel that they use in helicopters has. You start smelling that. If I smell that right now, I start to get excited. It'll start to ramp me up, because I know that, man, in the past when I would smell that, we were getting on the aircraft and we were getting ready to go out. And, and just a kind of a funny thing, we would be flying out, and there's a door gunner with an M60 machine gun on each side of the helicopter, and they're kind of facing out on the two sides. And I used to think, we're flying out, and I was watching them, and they're sitting over there, and the little heads are nodding around and stuff. And I thought, I guess it's a bumpy ride. Must be bumpy where they're sitting, and it's bouncing their head. Then one day I got to put on a headset, and when I put on the headset, I could hear all the radio transmissions that were going on. I could also hear that they had tuned in to the radio station in South Vietnam, and they're going with the beat of Creedence Clearwater Revival and, Bad Moons Rising or what. They're listening to a little music on the way out to work, and it was kind of interesting to realize what was going on. But you can get very excited about it, as well as there's a limit. There's a point where, people will say, I can't do that again. I can't go back out there again. And that's okay. You could leave the team whenever you wanted to, or as the team leader, I could have you removed from the team because I could see you are becoming dangerous now. You're either thinking you can't be killed, or you're too stressed from what we're doing, and you need to be moved to another job within SOG where you're not going across the border. Because when you go over there, it's a world of difference in the number of people that you were in contact with, and your chances of survival, went way down.
As a psychologist, you studied stress at the deepest level. What's one lesson you learned in combat that no textbook can teach about the way human beings actually handle fear?
Yeah, one of the things was I mentioned, I wanted to be a chemist. And I was kind of working chemistry into what I was seeing and experiencing. And then I started focusing more on the enemy and watching what they were doing so it would help me know what we needed to do to counteract what they were doing. And it finally dawned on me psychologically that there's a human reaction to combat. Humans react in predictable ways if you start shooting at them. And so my mindset was starting to leave the chemistry and move over the psychology. And so the psychology of the battle and everything. I told my team, I said, watch what happens. The next time we're in contact with the enemy, when we start shooting at them, if they go down to the ground or behind a tree or behind a rock, almost without exception, they will shoot around the right side of the tree or the rock, almost without exception, every time. Now, from our point of view, we'll be seeing the left side of the tree for us, but for them, it's the right side. And what will happen is they go behind that tree, and then on that side of the tree, you'll see the muzzle of their weapon come out, and right behind that muzzle will be their head coming out so they can shoot. So they're going to come on that side of the tree, so you're just waiting on them. And it gives you an advantage to take out more of them like that. So there are a lot of things like that that people instinctively do when someone starts shooting at them. It happens out on the streets here and everything. You watch the videos of where there's some gunfight going on. You'll see the police do the same thing. They'll shoot around the right side of the car, around the right side of the front of it or whatever. They don't shoot around the left side very often. If they're left-handed, they'll probably go to the left side. But if they're right-handed, they'll go to the other way. So there are a lot of things like that I started to pick up on and then train my team. This is what they're going to do, so that gives us an advantage. But then we also have to think about, we're humans. We'll do the same thing. If we don't train ourselves, we're going to go to the right side of the tree every time and shoot, and they'll figure that out and they'll start shooting us. When you go down, roll over. Don't shoot from where you just hit the ground. Roll away, because they're going to shoot right where you went down. So roll right or left, get away from where you just hit the ground. Don't shoot around the right side of that tree if you don't have to. There's a list of things that we started practicing and working on so that we wouldn't be doing that same instinctual thing that the NVA were doing. And that helped us to start to manage stress. And then breathing is a big deal. So it gets called a lot of things. I've always called it box breathing. So what you do is you inhale through your nose to the count of 4, slowly to the count of 4, pause to the count of 4, and then exhale through your mouth. It's very important you exhale back out through your mouth to the count of 4, pause to the count of 4, go back to your nose. So it's kind of like doing a box, but what's happening in your nose when you inhale, part of the air stays in the sinus cavities and spaces inside, and you want it to stay in there. So that's when you exhale out through your mouth, because while it's in there, it starts to, create nitric oxide. So when you inhale next time, you're sucking this nitric oxide that you've just created into your lungs. And when it goes into your lungs, then it gets into your bloodstream and it starts to relax the arteries. It lets the blood flow easier. It relaxes your heart, so it slows your heart rate back down some. and it helps reduce your stress level and your fear. So when I would climb out on a skid as we were getting close to go into a landing zone, I would start doing the box breathing and just doing it automatically, because then my stress level would start to come back down and I could start focusing on, this is what we have to do when we get there. These are the changes I'm going to have to make because of whatever. So there are a lot of little techniques like that to reduce your stress. You can use it if you have to do a podcast. You can do it if you have to talk to someone who really irritates you. You can talk to your boss and be doing it. And the really neat thing about it is nobody knows you're even doing it. You're standing there doing the box breathing, calming yourself down while you're talking to somebody that really irritates you. But you're staying calm. So there are a lot of little techniques like that. Anytime we start to get nervous or stress levels going up, your heart rate's going up, your blood pressure is going up, this can help bring it back down. If you start to get scared and panic because of whatever, this can help you get it back down.
Is that, I mean, stuff like that, obviously it's not the only thing, box breathing, but are there things, it's hard when I hear these stories to like really wrap my head around. You hear all these stories about, 10 guys versus 200 and stuff like that. And in my head, I'm just picturing 200 people shooting at one target. How in the world are you still here talking to us? Right. And is it training? Is it the defensive techniques of dropping to the ground and rolling? Is it better technology? Like, how is it possible?
It's a lot of those things, but one of the simplest things that helps out is if there's 200 of you and I'm on a ridge line, if all 200 of you probably can't shoot at me at the same time. Okay? So it's like if you're in town someplace and you walk out of a store and 5 or 6 guys jump on you. One of the things that you're trying to do, if you have multiple opponents, is keep moving to keep them in line as much as you can. You don't want them to surround you. You want to keep moving so that they can only come at you 1 or 2 at a time. All 5 of them can't jump on you if you keep moving. So you just increase the number to 200, 300, whatever. Keep moving around so that they can't all shoot at you at the same time. And, once you get in contact, you're calling for air support, you're calling for help. It might be an hour or 2 before they get there. And what I started doing was thinking about, they're trying to force me to move in a particular direction. They know the terrain. And they're trying to get me away from the clearings so that the helicopters can't come in and pick us up. They're trying to get me next to a cliff or something so I have no place to go. They're trying to move me. Why don't I do that to them? I study the map and the terrain before I go out there. So when we make contact, I know what the ground looks like. So if I start moving in a particular direction, I can cause you to move in a particular direction. So I can start trying to move you away from where I want you to go and where I can get the air support coming in to shoot at you and everything. I try to get you in a good position for them to take you out. And also to get you away from the landing zone that I want to go to try to escape. So, it's managing the battle space to try to get you so you can't all shoot at us at one time, or get you in a spot where it's easier for us to put bombs or napalm or whatever on you. It's kind of thinking through and practicing that before you go out there. We would have them build a sand table, a big box with sand in it, and we'd pile the sand up so that it looked like the terrain, the ridge lines, hilltops, and all of that. And then we'd say, this is where we're going to insert. So when we get there and we start moving, we're going to be going uphill or going downhill or whatever, and we're going to turn to the right. So we knew where the streams were going to be and things like that, and memorize that before you go out there. And all of that helped you manage your stress and helps you get out sometimes.
It's like you guys were playing chess, they were playing checkers in a way, right?
Yeah, it is. And you put together these great plans, but one of the principles that I taught my guys is adapt, adapt, adapt. When the helicopter touches the ground, our plan's going to change, because the enemy's not going to do what we thought they were going to do. They're going to mess up our whole plan. They're going to be coming from the wrong side or doing something different than they're supposed to do. And then I thought one day, I said, part of the problem is we're sitting here at this table planning how we're going to do everything and what the enemy's going to, but there's no NVA guy sitting here at the table with us, so we can tell him, now, when we do this is what I want you guys to do. So he doesn't know what to do when we get there, and he screws the whole plan up. So we have to just keep adapting and adapting, quickly. But then again, that's what you do every day in real life. You start out today with your plan on what you're going to do today. Something's going to happen, and you're going to have to adapt to it. And if you have the mindset of adapt, then it's not as stressful. You might not be getting to do exactly what you wanted to do, but it's not as stressful as if you're locked in on it and you don't want to budge. Adapt. What can I do a little differently? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, yeah, if you're so rigid about your plan, when someone breaks it, ruins your whole day.
Oh, it does.
Like the cop, like you said, the copier.
Yeah. And we do that. We do that with our lives. We put together a plan. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to finish high school. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get this kind of job. I'm going to get married around in here. I'm going to have kids. Here's how my life's going to go. Yeah, it's not how it goes. Something is going to happen along the way that causes you to have to adapt. And to the degree that you can adapt, the more successful you're going to be. You might not accomplish the goal that you started. I didn't become a chemist. I know a lot of chemistry, but I know a lot more about psychology. But it's okay. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with there are a lot of things I would like to have done, but then I think sometimes, particularly if I think about, wartime stuff, if I had done what I wanted to do in a particular case, that might have been the day I died.
I always have had such an appreciation for our military because of that sacrifice and those decisions you have to make. Dick, you've trained leaders in boardrooms and battlefields. What's the leadership principle forged in Vietnam that still works today?
One is lead by example. Lead by example. When we would go in on a mission, I was the first one off the helicopter. I'm going to be on the ground first. I want you guys to follow me. When we're fighting our way out, I'll be the last one to get on the helicopter. I'm going to get all of you guys out first, and then I'm coming. So you can trust me. I'm going to show you what I want you to do. If we need to assault the enemy, I'm going to assault with you. I'm going to lead by example, whatever it is. If you carry 80 pounds of gear, I'm going to carry 80 pounds of gear. And you take that out into the civilian world now. Just look at the daily headlines. You'll see people who are not leading by example. The ones that lead by example tend to be more successful. People want to follow them. And, you know, I'll admit that leadership is leadership. Some leaders may be leading us in the wrong direction, but they're really good leaders in terms of being able to get people to go and do those things. It's just their morals might have been messed up. There's something wrong with what they're doing. But in terms of getting people to follow them and lead them, they're using the right techniques and leadership skills, and that part worked. But you got to have that moral compass. You got to make sure you're going the right way. And there's a real problem, I think, in our society right now with people not going the right direction.
We need more leaders on both sides willing to make hard decisions, not just worry about re-elections. Anyways, I read that you once had a premonition that a chopper would be shot down, and it came true. You then volunteered to go down a rope, alone, with no gloves, into a hot landing zone to rescue the crew. Take us into your mindset as you slid 150 feet down that rope while being shot at, your hands being shredded to the bone, knowing you were the only hope those men had.
I tell you, my first thought was, I thought I had a good plan. I really thought I could hold on tightly enough to that brand new slick nylon rope that I could slow myself down enough I'd be okay. It didn't take but about 15 seconds to realize I had a flaw in my plan. I could not slow myself down. But to back up a little bit, I did. As we were flying out there, I had this premonition that one helicopter had already been shot down. There was a medevac on its way that was in front of us. And I had this premonition as we were going out there that the medevac helicopter got shot down too. And then that just left us. The only way maybe to save any survivors was to go down there. The only way you could get down there was on the rope. I told the crew chief what I had just seen play out. And he said, "You're crazy." I said, yeah, I know, that's crazy. But in a few minutes, he pulled me over and he said, the premonition you had just happened. The helicopter in front of us just got shot down. I said, that's interesting, because the only thing I have with me is my jungle fatigues and my boots. I don't have anything else. All of my combat gear, everything was back there where we were working on the helicopter. I'm not armed. I don't have anything. And then we flew around, and I could see the second helicopter that went down was kind of nose down in a steep ravine. The crew was still trapped inside. Fuel was spilling out of the helicopter and running down on them. So any match, flame, anything like that, a tracer around, hit it, the whole thing was just going to burn up and burn everybody. So I asked the pilot to circle back around. We were getting shot at, and he came around, and I pushed the rope. It had a bag of sand on it. I pushed it out of the helicopter. It went down almost to the top of the canopy, which was 150 feet high. So I borrowed the crew chief's M16. So he had a rifle, so I borrowed his rifle. He gave me a couple of magazines, and I stepped out on the skid and grabbed the rope, and off I went, and I just kept getting faster and faster as I was going down the rope. And after about 20 or 30 feet, that white rope was just solid red, because it was just all blood. It had taken all the skin off my hands, my fingers, my thumbs. It was cutting into the muscle and stuff in my hands. And, I was going on down, and there was a strap on the end of it that managed to stop me when I got to the end of it. But then I could see, I was being shot at, the helicopter was being shot at, he was getting ready to fly off. And I knew I couldn't hold on to it if he started to fly. So as I kind of centered over a tree, I just turned loose, dropped about 20 feet down to the treetops, started tumbling, crashing through there. And about 50 feet or so from the ground, I finally wrapped around a big limb, and that stopped me, knocked the breath out of me, cracked a couple more ribs. Then I climbed down, and there was some NVA down at the base, close to the base of the tree, so I shot them and then went to find the aircraft that had the crew in it, and spent the rest of the day working gunships and blowing trees down to make a hole big enough we could pull everybody up through it. And took about 4.5 hours, and got everybody out. And once they were all up in the helicopter, then I got on and went up, and we went home.
What made you? I mean, I know it's like, you're Dynamite Dick Thompson, but what in the world made you go like that's such a? Did you do that thing? Were you thinking in your brain, if that was me that went down, I'd want somebody to come do this for me, or is it just your brotherhood? You had to go get them.
Well, I mean, it is a brotherhood, but if I was in a helicopter and I saw you down on the ground about to die, I mean, bear was about to eat you, or something, traumatic was about to happen to you. I mean, I'd find a way to go down there and get you and help you at least. So, I mean, that's the way my mind works. That's, I would think that you would do the same with me. If I was laying down there, you'd find a way to get down there to me. So, in this particular case, just a lot of people were shooting.
That's what I'm saying. It's like there's the helicopter's down, there's North Vietnamese closing in, the fuel's pouring on them, so one flame and everyone's dead, and just jumping right into it. It's just so, I mean, it just takes like brass balls, or really, I guess the right way to say it is you have to be such a hero to do something like that. I mean, again, that's why you're you and why you've had the success that you've had. But it's just so crazy to think. I mean, everyone thinks they do that, right? It's so easy for me to sit here right now in my house and very comfortable situation. I'd like to think I would do that, but you don't know until like it's kind of like the closest thing, which is not in the same world, is like in football. Everyone knows exactly what they do, and then you get hit a couple times, right? It's like that Mike Tyson quote.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a plan to like hit in the mouth. I think I would, if I was on a helicopter and saw you guys, I would do everything I could to help. But it's so easy to say that in my, again, in my comfortable chair here talking to you.
Yeah. There are times when a decision has to be made. And there are decisions that you only get one shot at. Once you step off the skid of that helicopter holding onto the nylon rope, you can't get back up there. You have just made the decision that you're going down the rope. You can't get back up there. I mean, I used to train people in sport parachute jumping, and teach them how to do that. And one of the things, when they'd go to make their first jump, they'd be in the airplane. We had the door off. And they would put one foot out on a little step that was right outside the plane, and they'd reach out and grab the strut that was going up to the wing, then grab a hold of it, and kind of turn their body out, and then I would say go, and I was always surprised at how many people would look around at me and said, "Who? Me?" And I said, "You're the only one out there. Go. It's time to go." But occasionally, somebody would take their foot off the little step and change their mind the last second, and they'd grab a hold of the strut and try to hold on to it. And I just watched. And I was like, this is not going to last long. You just can't hang on to that strut. In about 10 seconds, you're going to fall off. I had one guy, and all the years I did that, I had one guy who managed to get back in the plane. He was kind of tall, he had long legs, and he managed to hook his foot back onto that little step, and somehow I was just fascinated watching him come back in. But anyway, there are decisions that you make, and well, I can't get back in the plane. I got to make the next decision based on the situation now, and that is I'm going fast. So I've got to survive going down the rope. I'm going to probably go into the canopy. I've got to survive to get to the ground. And if I can do that, then I can go, get the guys out of the helicopter. But, it's a decision, adapt. When we talked about adapting earlier, I had to, okay, this plan's not working. I'm going to have to adapt it to something else and to something else. And, in the end, things worked out. I had some pretty bad hands for a while, but the good thing about your hands is your hands are like your feet. The skin on the inside of your hands are like on the bottom of your feet. It's a working skin. It's a regenerative skin. It's designed to be worn off and regenerate itself. You get a big blister on your hand. It'll heal right back up. You burn all the skin off the palm of your hand. It'll grow back, just like your feet. Those blisters will heal up and it'll grow back. It takes it a while, but you're miserable because it starts to crust over. You can't touch anything. Sweat gets in it. It burns, and particularly like in this case, they told me there's actually another guy still out there in the first helicopter that burned. Nobody told me there was another guy, and they said you got to go back out in the morning and get him. Fortunately, it was a big storm for about 2 days, so I had a couple of days to, really get my hands sore before I had to go back out and find the other guy. But yeah, I think you'd be surprised. You might get surprised like I did. You start out with great intentions and you just didn't have a good plan. But it worked out in the end.
In other interviews, you've mentioned the reality of close quarters combat with a knife. There's a powerful and brutal detail that your only regret was not closing your mouth during these moments. Can you explain what that means and the psychological toll of that kind of intimate, violent combat?
You've been talking to John Stryker-Meyer too much. I'm sure he's the one that suggested that you ask that question. There were a few occasions in hand-to-hand combat where I had to deal with the bad guy, and a couple of times, I managed to shoot him from a few inches away from his face with a automatic burst of rounds, and when you do it like that, everything just kind of comes apart, and then you have your jugular and carotid arteries in your neck here, and the blood squirts out. But you also get the brain matter and bone fragments hit you in the face. And if you got your mouth open, some of it's going to go in your mouth, and kind of surprises you. And you would think that a halfway intelligent person would learn from that the first time and not do it again. You might do everything that you had to do to survive, but close your mouth. And I did have a few other occasions where I don't know if I was talking about the person's ancestors or something. I for some reason my mouth was open, and you get a lot of stuff hitting you in the mouth too. So
This is probably a pretty brutal question, so we can skip it if you want. But is there a difference when you're killing somebody with a knife versus a gun? Like I imagine the knife, like my dad mentioned the intimacy of it, like you're right there next to him, and I don't know, it feels like it would be different.
Psychologically, the studies show that distance starts to change the impact of engaging someone. The further back you are away from him, in general, the easier it is to actually pull the trigger. The closer you get to him, the more difficult it becomes, particularly in the beginning. And by the time you get close enough where you're using a knife, yeah, it's very intimate, and you still do it. I mean, you got to live. It's one of you is going to die, and you tend to make the decision most of the time that he's going to die, not you, or at least that was my thinking. One of us has got to go, and just to kind of go out to the rifle range. And you'd be surprised how many people join the military and they're going through basic training and they go out to the rifle range where they have to, shoot at targets way down range. There are a lot of people who say, I'm not going to shoot that target because it's a silhouette target. It's kind of shaped like a person from the waist up without arms, but they won't shoot it. I'm not going to shoot that. How are you going to be a combat soldier or a Marine or whatever if you won't engage the targets? I'm not doing that. Because they found in World War II and some in Korea that people were having trouble engaging targets or in shooting people because they had trained with a big bullseye target. Nobody hesitates to shoot at a big bullseye target. But when you make that target look like a person, now you have a lot of people who won't shoot it. So they thought, let's change it to the silhouette, get people used to shooting at a silhouette so they won't hesitate in combat. But a lot of people do. And they still do. People will just refuse to shoot because if I shoot at you, you're going to shoot back. You'll know where I am, and you're going to shoot back. So some people will just go down to the ground and they stay down there. They're not going to shoot because they don't want you to know where they are and shoot back at them. So yeah, but distance has a big impact on people engaging someone. If I'm looking at you and you can see my eyes, my face up close to you, when you have to shoot me, it's much more difficult. If I'm 50 yards out here someplace and you're shooting at me.
Yeah, it makes it so much more real.
Yeah. And you're going to get blood on you. And you will if you're close. You're going to get splattered, or if you're really close, you're going to get a lot. And with a knife, you're definitely going to get it all over you. So.
The North Vietnamese army had a dossier on you, calling you completely nuts. A huge part of that reputation came from your insane loadout and your Claymore tactics. Can you explain your strategy of daisy chaining up to 7 Claymores to go off at once, and how that psychological shock terrified the North Vietnam Army and saved your team's lives?
Normally what we would do, with the normal teams when I got there, at night, as you find your place where you're going to spend the night, you try to get in some thick bushes or something so people can't walk up on you easily. You figure out if someone's going to come down and try to get you, what's the most likely avenue of approach, and you set up a Claymore on that route facing out toward where the enemy's coming from. The shot, it has 700 steel balls in it, about the size of double buckshot. It has 1.5 pounds of C4 behind that blows it out. So you set that Claymore out there to and try to stop them. But I started daisy chaining them together, which means that when I set off the first Claymore, it instantly set off the others that it was daisy chained to. Remember, I had hooked them all together. They were spread out, but they were hooked together facing that lab avenue of approach. So when I set it off, instead of 1.5 pounds of C4 going off, you had 10.5 pounds of C4, which is a tremendous blast going out, blowing rocks, tree limbs, whatever in that direction, plus 4,900 steel balls traveling at 4,000 feet a second out toward the enemy. And, if you got hit with that, you were just a piece of Swiss cheese or meat kind of scattered around the jungle. And in the blast of 10.5 pounds of C4, that'll kill you. If you're close to that, just that'll kill you. If it doesn't, it terrifies you. And then you think, this guy must be crazy. Nobody put 7 Claymores together. And, he's used up all his Claymores now, so the survivors can go down and get him. But I would put 3 more daisy chained together, just a little ways down from that. So when they would start down to get us, I'd set off 3 more. And then they were convinced that I was crazy and that I had a lot more Claymores. So maybe we don't want to go down and mess with this guy right now. And then I take others and set them up individually and put time fuse on them, so it's going to explode after 45 seconds or a minute or 5 minutes, and these things are starting to go off, and they didn't know where they were. They didn't know when they were going to go off. And that would give us time, to start to get away. And I had my team members all carry 10 fragmentation grenades. So these are the grenades that explode and shrapnel goes everywhere. Most teams carried 5 with each person. My teams carried 10 with each person. So if I went out with a 7-man team, we had 70 fragmentation grenades. And in the dark, you can be popping those things and throwing them all over. They don't know where they come from. It's just all of a sudden there's this huge explosion. And we had a bunch of them. So we could just mess your whole night up if you came after us. So,
that's horrifying.
So yeah, the North Vietnamese thought I was crazy. And maybe they were right, I don't know.
Both things can be true, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, this next question isn't going to help your case. You developed an ability to become completely invisible in the jungle, which went far beyond camouflage. You said you could literally smell them in an ambush because of their fear sweat. Can you break down this incredible tracking skill and the other psychological tactics you used to hunt the hunters?
When I was a kid and playing out in the woods alone, I would work on, can I slip up on a deer? Can I slip up on a raccoon or a bird? Trying to go after different animals and trying to learn, how can I do that? And I didn't realize when I was a kid that smell was a problem. The human smell made me visible. A deer can smell you from a long ways off. And deer hunters know that. They know if they're upwind from a deer, that deer is going to smell them fairly quickly. And we have a client that we work for who makes a human scent remover for deer hunters. So they can spray themselves down with this and they don't smell like a person and they can get closer to the deer. But I didn't have that, but I started working with my guys, let's be invisible when we go out there. And that means we don't make any noise. So before we get on the helicopter to fly out, we're all going to jump up and down, and we're going to listen for anything that rattles, any noise that's made. So we get rid of noisy things. Any piece of metal has to be coated with black paint or with black electrical tape so it doesn't shine. You have to have on camouflage. You know, you have to do all these things so that you're not, you know, physically visible. It got to the point where you have to wash the clothes you're going to wear on the mission 3 days before we go out, and you can't use any detergent when you wash them. They have to be washed just in clean water, so there's no detergent smell that somebody can smell. You can't eat the strong spices when you're out there, particularly if they're spices from South Vietnam, because you can smell it. On more than one occasion, I would smell the North Vietnamese in an ambush before we get to them, because you could smell the food they had eaten. The other thing is that if you go out and do something outside when it's hot, you're going to sweat. But if you sweat because you are afraid, it's a different kind of sweat. It has different enzymes in it. It smells different, and it's stronger. So if you're afraid, you're laying in an ambush site, and you know I'm coming, you will start to do stress sweat. And stress sweat is stronger, it smells different, and I will smell it. Particularly if I can be downwind of you, I'll smell it. I know you're there. And then, you know, taking a little more personal, I told my guys, look, I know we're going to be out there several days, and at some point, you're going to have to stop and poop. What you eat influences how the poop smells. I want your poop to smell like NBA poop, so that if they find it, they smell it, they think, oh, it's one of us. So we don't want to be eating the South Vietnamese different spices and things unless it's the same that, you know, some of the North Vietnamese eat. We want to be, you know, as much like them as we can. So we want to be very quiet. We don't want to smell when we're out there. We want to be careful how we move. And we went through walking. The Native American Indians walked in a particular way when they were slipping up on a deer or whatever, toe down first. So we started practicing toe down first. So it goes on the ground first, and then your foot comes down. So if you break a twig, you've got the boot in between the sound of the twig and going out. The sound gets muffled going backwards. So we don't want you to hear us coming. If you ask deer hunters, what do you notice about a deer when you first see them? They're turning their head. If they're coming straight at you, they're very difficult to see until they start turning their head and looking around. It's the same with, if you're coming straight at me and looking at me, you're more difficult to see than if you're looking around trying to see where I am. When you start turning, then you're much easier to see. So we stop that. Your weapon's pointed forward, you're moving your eyes, looking right, looking left. Don't turn your head. If you turn your head, you're going to be seen. And if you're turning your weapon and you turn, and that's what everybody tries to do, you turn your weapon over here and he's over there, it takes a long time to come all the way back around over to this side to shoot at you. If you got it right here, it's so quick, you got a chance to survive. So there are a lot of things like that, and we just do the signal. If I did that, my hand up vertical like that on my nose, that's be invisible.
Did you notice a big difference in, I guess, your combat when you made the decision to be invisible? Like, did you get shot at less, or did you sneak up on them more, or was it about the same?
It was easier to get closer to them. But the other part of it is once I know what I need to do to be invisible, now I can't help but see the bad guys when they're not doing it. When they have some metal on them, they make a noise, they're turning their heads, they're doing the things that we're not doing, and it's easier for us to see them and attack them first if we decide we want to attack right then. So stop doing all that stuff. If you're being tracked, if they have dogs and they're tracking you with the dogs, we used to carry a little plastic bottle that had black pepper and powdered CS, a military grade tear gas powder, kind of mixed up together, and I could squirt a little bit of that on the trail, and if the dog came up to it and sniffed it, it would mess his smell up for a while. Plus, it would burn his nose, and he didn't want to be sniffing. But they learn that. After they get a nose full of CS, they'll smell it from a distance next time, and they'll go around it. But the big thing is they can hear you. They don't have to smell you. They can hear you even farther away. And if you break a twig, you're over here a couple hundred yards and you break a twig, that dog will hear it. And he knows you're over there. And eventually, if they have a dog, they're coming over there. So you try to get rid of them. And in a few cases, I shot them with a pistol with a silencer. I would go get the guy who had the dog, the actual tracker, take him and the dog out. I carried what was called toe poppers, or an M14 mine. It's a little round plastic container with an explosive in it, and you put those on the trail and arm it. And I knew from experience, from being a little kid, I knew that if there's a log laying on the ground, when people come to it, they tend to step over it and step right on the other side. So right on the other side of that log on our trail would be where I'd put the toe popper. And the tracker would step over that log as he's following us and step on it, and he'd take off his foot and maybe part of his shin along with it. And then everybody's scared because now they're using mines, or we were using mines, and they'd be afraid, to come. Yeah, because they don't have a hospital out here. They're just going to bleed to death. Anyway, those are things to help you stay invisible.
In one fight, you were being completely overrun and made the call to drop cluster bombs directly on your own position. You said 15 bomblets landed inside your own perimeter and not a single one detonated. Can you describe the feeling of making that final call and the moment you realized you should be dead, but by some miracle you weren't?
Yeah, that's kind of like stepping off the skid of the helicopter. Once you start sliding down the rope, you can't get back in. Once you tell them to drop the cluster bomb unit on your people, then you hug the ground and you wait. You can't put it back in. But by that time I was starting to realize that I had help coming from upstairs. There's no way. I mean, there's always a few bomblets in the cluster bomb that'll hit and not explode, but not that many, not right on top of you, and they just hit the ground. I mean, I thought I was dead because I could hear the thuds of them hitting, and I thought I must be dead because I don't hear them explode. And then when we realized, because they're exploding all around us, and you could hear the North Vietnamese screaming and all this stuff, and I thought, we are alive. And I knew I had help coming from upstairs, because those are the situations that just don't happen. The chance of that is just unbelievably slim unless you got some extra help, and that helped us get out of there. But that was one, where I told the Covey, the forward air controller up there, you got two planes. The first one comes in and drops his cluster bombs, and I said, and then listen good to see if you hear me come back on the radio. Because if I come back on the radio, I don't want the second one to come in, because that means we're still alive. The bad guys are running. Don't put the second one on us. So, I came back up really quick and told him to abort. Don't bring the second one in, because we're alive and they are moving out. So it was a very scary thing. I mean, that was one of those times where I kind of looked around and said, is this the last thing I'm ever going to see? It's not a very pretty place, but is this it? So, and then, I was really hoping that I could just keep pulling the trigger as long as I could, taking out as many as I could before, it was over. So,
I imagine faith can be hard to hold on to in combat, but I can't think of anything explaining those explosives not going off other than divine intervention. One or two bomblets not going off, maybe, but that's too many to be a coincidence. Where has your faith been most tested? And how did those moments reshape the way you see God, yourself, and your family?
Yeah, I had so many experiences. I tried to put a lot of them in the book. But I had so many experiences where I should have died, and I didn't. It was just hard to explain how I could still be alive. But even on that, I mean, that was one mission that we were talking about. That if you go back to where we were talking about the lady on the radio, that was the beginning of this mission. So we had that. We had all the bombs that I was bringing in. We had the big firefight with those guys. We ran down the hill. We got ambushed as we went down the hill. We had those cluster bombs fall on us. When we got down on the landing zone trying to get out, that's when I'm standing next to the helicopter. I'm throwing people up on it, and I heard this. Everything just went silent. I heard this loud booming voice that said "drop," and I just dropped to my knees right there. And as I did, a burst of machine gun fire came by right where my head had been and just cut a hole, round hole there in the side of the helicopter, right where I'd been. So, there's just that one mission. It was just thing after thing after thing. That's not me. I don't think it was luck. I don't believe a lot in luck. And it wasn't a skill. I mean, I was just throwing people up on the helicopter. So skill didn't cause me to drop. It just, I was told to drop. So, yeah. You can't experience all of that and not have it influence, your faith.
You know what? We were, like you mentioned a couple of times, we had on John Stryker Meyer. He told us one story about you, and actually Jack Carr, both of them told the stories about you that I said, I got to make sure I ask him. We got him on. One of them was John Meyer described, I think it was 10,000 North Vietnamese versus maybe like 10 or 20 of you guys. And then Jack Carr told a story about you being on a helicopter, but down, you were like rappelling down, and then they had to drive and you were crashing through the top of the tree lines. Can you tell us those two stories?
There was a North Vietnamese division that was moving to attack 101st Airborne, several battalions that was in a battle with them. And they were bringing this division around, like 10,000, to try to crush the 101st. And my mission was to go out, find them, and then to be able to put enough airstrikes on them to kill them. And as we were going in, we actually got shot down. They shot the helicopter down, so I crashed onto the clearing, and I survived that with a broken back. But I had two of my other people with me on the helicopter that crashed. I drug them over into the bomb crater, and we did battle from the bomb crater. The rest of the morning and afternoon, and eventually got out. But then they needed to put a team back in the following morning because we had eliminated about 3,000 of the 10. They put us in the next morning, or wanted to, so we could get the rest of them. And so I told them, I said, I really have a back issue here. But if we can wrap it up somehow, so we put some belts and different things on a piece of wood in the back that was wrapped up with some gauze to make it a little softer. Gave me some pain meds that night, and then the next morning, went back in, but I couldn't carry my rucksack. It was put too much pressure on my back. But anyway, we went back out there the next day, and we got the information that we needed, had some hand-to-hand going on that day as well as the previous day, but managed to make it out, and gave the coordinates, which defined a large rectangular area. We gave those coordinates to the B-52 pilots that were coming, and so they sent a flight of 6 B-52s. Each one of them was carrying 110 500-pound bombs, and within a period of about 2 minutes or so, they dropped all 660 of those bombs on this area where we had discovered that that's where the rest of the 10,000 were waiting. So that evening we took out the rest of them. So that was a pretty good mission. We got rid of a lot of people, and it was. I thought when they told us about it, there's 10,000 of them, and I figured if I took a 6-man team, that would make things kind of even. But I had all those B-52s back here waiting on me to say, this is where they are. And a B-52 strike, you can't imagine. I mean, it's an earthquake. Everything is moving, everything is burning, everything is blowing in the air. And it just wipes out everything in the area that you tell them to put it. So that was pretty cool.
He was telling us the story. He said that he's like, yeah, and Dick was really mad because they lost a couple guys that day. We lost, I can't remember the numbers. I think he said we lost 2 guys that day, but we talked to the North Vietnamese after the war, and they had lost 9,000 or something. It was something insane.
Yeah, it was a good mission. I mean, my back still hurt, sure. But we got through it. And
if you had to boil down the essence of SOG Brotherhood into one sentence for someone who never wore a uniform, what would it be? It's
having that brother relationship with the person. You're combat buddies, but you're combat brothers. And Lynn Black and I, John probably talked about Lynn Black some too. But Lynn and I both had this same kind of philosophy of, I don't want a lot of time between missions. I want to go do it, come back, do a little training, get ready for the next one, and then go out and do it. I don't want to come back and have 2 weeks to think about it and stuff like. I want to do it, get ready for the next one, and go back out. In fact, I don't know if they told you this one, but so Lynn and I were talking, and I suggested that what if we both get back from a mission about the same time, and we're both back here, what if instead of having some downtime, let's take a few members off of your team, a few members off of my team, let's put them together and form our own little covert team and go outside of the compound at night, and we'll go practice. We'll set up some ambushes. We'll try some different things because there's a lot of NVA and North Vietnamese out there around Marble Mountain outside of our compound. So why don't we go out there and we can practice. And we decided we would call it, his code name was Blackjack, mine was Dynamite. So we decided to call it, the Blackjack, the Black Dynamite Hunting Club. And we would go out and we would hunt and we would try, could we ambush 4 or 5 guys with just pistols with silencers on them so we didn't make any noise? Could we use some other silent weapons? What are some different ways we could take people out? And then we were talking, after we'd been doing that for a while, what if the blackjack hunting expeditions, and what if we go to somebody like Bob and say, Bob, you never get to go outside the wire. We're inviting you to go with us on this next hunting expedition, and we'll take you out there and let you actually shoot at somebody and maybe shoot one. And then in the future, sometime when your grandchild is saying, what did you do in Vietnam, Grandpa? You can say, I used to go out and hunt the bad guys at night on the special team. So we'd take somebody out there with us who'd never been shot at before and let them get a little experience. I mean, it was a cool thing to do. But we would share then what we learned, when we would go out and practice these different techniques and stuff. So it's pretty cool. So anyway, you'll see something in the book about the Black Dynamite, hunting expeditions. You even it has a logo and stuff in there.
You've spoken about emotional intelligence as a shield against leadership failure. How do you teach someone to listen under pressure when everything inside them wants to react instead?
And we do that now, our company does, with law enforcement, firefighters, first responders. We still work with special ops. We'll go back to Bragg or Campbell and work with the special operators there. And it's learning the stress techniques to mitigate the stress. It's practice, it's getting used to it. And the more we all work together, we trust each other, and practice those techniques, the more comfortable we get, the faster we can move. If you were to see what a unit like Delta Force does, how fast they move. I mean, it's just like clockwork. Everybody knows exactly where to go. They know how to adapt. They don't have to talk, and they do it very fast compared to what a normal, special teams do. So you build that confidence in each other. And just one little thing, like with my team, I taught them that if you get hit, if we're in contact and you get hit, start yelling, hit, hit, hit. I need to hear you. I need to know you're hit, you're still alive, and be able to locate where you are so I can come get you. I'm not going to leave you out there, but I need to know you're hit, so I come get you. So we would practice that because they could all say that word regardless of what language they spoke. And one of the things that it did for them was it gave them more confidence, more trust, because they knew I was going to come get them. And they saw that happen on a regular enough basis, that they had a lot of trust. And that helped them mitigate some of the stress. They knew we were carrying extra ammunition. They knew we were doing all this invisibility stuff and things like that. And it just gave them a lot more confidence in what we were doing and how we were doing it.
So much of these operations seem like a trust fall. When that trust got fragile on the battlefield, how did you rebuild it?
You'll notice that one of the things I started doing almost immediately, and particularly once I was the team leader, was we did after-action reviews when we came back in. Most people think about after-action review as you get the team together and we talk about what we did well, what we didn't do so well on, and I took it from that to not just what the team did well on or didn't, but Troy, you got really upset at Tim out there. What was going on? What were you so upset about? Well, Tim was supposed to go this way and he didn't go, and I could have gotten killed. Well, let's talk about that. So we found with the after action review, we could bring up things that people were not happy about, as well as the things we did good. But if I've got an issue with somebody, I could bring it up. I could, to team leader, I could bring it up with you. I said, you were really dragging behind out there. What was going on? And let's talk about it so it, we don't have that happen again. Plus, I put in a post-combat training. If you get a chance to see the books, you'll see after every mission, after action review, and then post-combat training. We've got to train on the things that we didn't do well on in the last mission. And then we'll train to get ready for whatever the next mission is. But we tried to go back and correct the mistakes to get better on things that we might not, be as good on. I started making part of that post-training, you got to shoot left-handed. We're going to go to the range and we're going to spend a day on the range with you just shooting left-handed. But because back then the weapon that we used was set normally for right-handed shooters. You could take it in and have the armor or change it for a left-handed shooter. But if I'm a right-handed shooter and I'm shooting and I get hit in the right hand, and now I have to shoot left-handed, if I haven't been training to do that, I can't do it because everything is different. When I'm shooting right-handed, my right index finger takes the magazine out. My thumb turns the selector switch. But when I put that weapon in the other hand, I can't reach any of that stuff. And there's no time to change it with people shooting at you. So there are a lot of things like that we started working on so that we could be better and they had more confidence and just keep getting better every time.
Is there a mission detail you never put on the page that still lives in your head and shapes how you lead and love today?
This is just me. I think you have to have the battle plan, the terrain, everything in your mind before you go on a mission. I need to be able to see it. I need to be able to manage the pieces on the field because I know where everything is. I know what the terrain looks like. In the book where I went down the rope, one of the things that I talk about in that is before I stepped off the skid, I took a mental photograph of the ground from where I was looking down, mental photograph that had, here's where the helicopter is that it's in the ravine and the fuel spilling out. Here's where the other one crashed. Here's where the team is located. Here's where I am. Here's where the sun is. So when I get down inside the jungle, I know which way to go, and I know the distance, and I have it in my mind. I can see that map as I'm moving around, and it helps guide me, helps me be able to manipulate the battle that's going on. And, I'd been doing that for, a long time before I got to Vietnam. That was just part of operating, because I'm a visual person, and I can memorize it quickly if I see it.
This is kind of a corny question, but I wondered if you ever took an IQ test. You are off the charts in my book.
I'm a member of Mensa. Mensa is a high IQ society, so you have to be over 130 to get in.
That makes a lot more sense. If I tried to daisy chain 7 Claymores together, I'd end up blowing my own. It hit me.
Dick Thompson, thank you for your years in uniform and for the life you've lived since, teaching that courage is not just a battlefield virtue, but a family one that stress can break or build depending on how we meet it. And faith and love outlast even the hardest missions. I truly cannot imagine going through some of the things you did for people like us to live in such an amazing country. So thank you again, and may God bless you, your family, and all those serving the United States of America.
Well, thank you, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to do that. I'm honored to be on your program and talk to the two of you. I mean, this has been great. It's it's nice to have a different podcast. I mean, we talked about the same topics, but in a different way, and that's always refreshing. So I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Dick, I got a quick question here before we go. This is how we met you, so I have to ask you the same question. You got to meet us, and you got to kind of see the feel of the podcast. Who are a couple of people that you know that you think we should try to have on next? Like Jack Carr recommended you.
One would be Lynn Black. I don't know that you'd have to check with John Stockermeyer and just he talks to Lynn more often than I do to see if he's up to it. He might not be right now, but when he gets back on his feet, he would be a good one. And I'll get you a couple of other names that I think you would enjoy having, and I'll send those to you.
Now on to our final word segment, where we ask our guests a few rapid-fire questions. What was the happiest moment in your life?
When I married my wife.
What is the biggest adversity you've faced?
Getting over SOG and getting over the combat.
What are you most excited about?
Working with the vets. I do a lot with vets and Gold Star families, and I want to be able to do more, so I'm talking to people about more things that we can do, that the company can do.
Awesome. What advice would you give your younger self?
Remember that you're not bulletproof.
Do you have any book recommendations for us or for the listeners?
I just happen to have a couple of books here. SOG codename Dynamite Book 1 and Dynamite Book 2. And then I think you've already seen or maybe listened to the audio version of The Stress Effect. So yeah, those three, but particularly these two, it's loaded with principles that work in combat, but they work every day in your everyday life. We talked about adapt and things like that, but there's a bunch of them in there that anybody can use in their everyday life.
The name of our podcast is Nothing Left Unsaid. Do you have anything you want to say?
I appreciate being able to say, what I have, but I would just say to the two of you, I think this is awesome, what you're doing. I think what you're doing, the way you're doing it, and it's, one of the principles in here is keep moving forward. Don't stop. And one of the missions in there, I just saw it. I stopped the team in the rocks because I thought we could fight from there, and they just came around us like a big amoeba. Don't stop moving. You got to keep moving, and that's what I see you two doing. Y'all, you don't care how many bad guys there are. You don't care what the terrain is like. You're just continuing to move forward. And I think that's the greatest example that you guys can put out there, is just having other people come join you, experience you and how you do things, and you just keep going. You keep going forward. And if people could get that mindset, don't stop. You're going to run into adversity along the way. Things are going to happen. You get up and you keep going. So, I really enjoy it.
Thanks so much. And like my dad said too, thank you for your service. It's really appreciate it. And we're all lucky because people like you. All right.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, consider supporting the podcast for free by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends. Your support means the world to us. This episode of Nothing Left Unsaid is brought to you by 11 Labs. Their groundbreaking technology makes a huge difference, and we're grateful for their support. To learn more, visit 11labs.io. A substantial portion of our sponsorship proceeds go to tackleals.com, funding cutting-edge ALS research. If you'd like to join the fight and contribute, visit tackleals.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on Nothing Left Unsaid.